So I'll go ahead and get started just to stay on time. But good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the Hive's Think Tank webinar series. My name's Olivia and I'm the operations manager at the Hive. We're super excited to have you join us and hear from our expert panel speakers from Avanta Ventures, Swiss Re, and CSAA. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly go over some of today's best practices and explain what the Hive Think Tank does, and then I'll pass it over to Ravi, the Hive's founder and managing director. So we do love questions, so we would love for the audience to use the Q&A button and not the general chat box at the bottom of your screen to ask our presenters any questions, which they will answer towards the end of the panel discussion, probably like the last 10-15 minutes. And then the session is also being recorded and will be available to view later on for those that need to hop off a little bit early or aren't able to stay for the entire session. And I'll share the link with everyone in their email, and you can also find it on the Hive's YouTube channel. So the Hive Think Tank is an ecosystem of thought leaders, corporations, and entrepreneurs. We're an event and content platform with a focus on AI, 5G, blockchain, Web3, enterprise, health, and much more. So we do host events almost every other week on cutting edge topics in technology and business, as well as publish kind of corresponding written thought pieces on our Medium page. So to stay in the know of our events, make sure to join our meetup group and newsletter, and I'll link the meetup group in the chat box below in a little bit. So lastly, I also do want to give a huge shout out and thank you to our sponsors, Avanta Ventures and Gamuda, for their support. And for our audience, if you guys are interested in getting involved with the Hive Think Tank, feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is listed at the bottom. It's olivia@hivedata.com. And then make sure to follow us on social media and use the hashtag HiveData or @HiveData on LinkedIn and Twitter. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ravi, our managing director, to talk more about the Hive and introduce our amazing panel speakers.
Thank you, Olivia. So just briefly about the Hive. Hive is a venture fund. And so we collaborate with entrepreneurs to create companies. And then we are an early stage pre-seed, seed, Series A investor. Our focus is on leveraging data and AI to enable new opportunities, drive disruption in a variety of verticals. And you see the key verticals listed here. And so one of our areas of focus is InsurTech. And there, if you go to the next slide, Olivia, we are collaborating with Avanta, where Moha is from, and Swiss Re, CSAA, and others. The Hive is a global entity. So Olivia and myself are based in Palo Alto. And the Hive in the US covers North America, primarily US and Canada. And in addition to the Hive here, we have separate Hive entities in Brazil, Southeast Asia based in Malaysia, India based in Mumbai and Bangalore, and next year, the Hive Europe based in Paris, Berlin, and Monaco. So if you are an early stage entrepreneur and interested in funding or starting a company, please do reach out to us. Next slide, please. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Moha Shah. Moha is the head of portfolio development at Avanta Ventures. Over to you, Moha.
Thank you, Ravi. Welcome, everyone, to this panel. As Ravi mentioned, I am the head of portfolio development at Avanta Ventures. Avanta Ventures is the corporate venture capital arm of CSAA Insurance Group. And we invest in early stage startups across mobility, InsurTech, and risk adjacent sectors to insurance. Today, I'm very thrilled to have a discussion about the trends in insurance distribution with two experts. We have Pranav Pasricha from Swiss Re as the global head of property and casualty solutions, and Knievel, the general manager of alternative channel management at CSAA Insurance Group. I'd like to ask Chris and Pranav to briefly introduce themselves to you.
I can go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Knievel. I lead our alternative distribution channels at CSAA. I've been at the company for 14 years, so quite some time. Prior to that, I spent in management consulting. My time at CSAA, I've had a number of different jobs. Most of my time has been focused on enterprise strategy as part of our corporate strategy team. I also worked in our labs team focused on emerging and nascent technologies and building strategies and looking at different applications for them across the enterprise. In the past 2.5 years, I've been focused on building out alternative distribution channels. And so what that means for us is this is anything outside of our club branches, which is our primary channel, our direct sales function that we operate in certain markets around the country, as well as our independent agency program. So outside of that is alternative distribution.
Thank you, Chris. Pranav?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Pranav. I head the property and casualty solutions for Swiss Re. And for those who don't know the solutions business of Swiss Re, it is basically what we describe as our third pillar business unit, which is responsible for all activities where we add value to or enable the transfer of business to Swiss Re, to reinsurance. So for example, providing digital platforms, consulting services, technology, data solutions to our cedents and partners. But we're also responsible for all other ancillary or alternate business or non-core treaty business for Swiss Re, which includes a lot of work that we do with what we call strategic partnerships. So all of our business that comes in through the alternate affinity, embedded channel, digital MGAs, all of that sits in my team. And so is a lot of responsibility for product innovation, working with various insurtechs and embedded and affinity players, creating new product categories and then getting them placed. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Pranav. In terms of format for the session over the next hour, I'll start by asking Chris and Pranav a few questions. We'll leave ample time for you, the audience, to ask your questions at the end. If you could kindly post your questions in the Q&A, I'll be sure to address them at the end. All right, so with that, we'll get started. My first question is for Chris. Chris, you lead alternative distribution for personal lines at CSAA Insurance Group. How has the distribution landscape for personal lines evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, if you look back a handful of years ago, there wasn't a lot of activity, at least from where we're standing in terms of alternative distribution channels. But starting a few years ago, we started to see these rise in these partnerships and these new channels being developed. And it feels like every year, we see more and more of these deals being struck. So, and I think this is going to continue to progress. I feel like the insurance industry has always had a target on its back. Everyone thinks that they can do it kind of better than the industry as they're doing it right now. And so what that means for us is a lot of interesting opportunity for us to test. I think a lot of these alternative channels, these can help us find shoppers that might not have considered AAA previously, might not have found their way into a branch. And each of these channels and some of these new models that are being built, they'll have these very unique shticks, if you will. Like some have, AI will find you the right policy for kind of who you are as a risk, or kind of different ways appeal to different masses of folks. And so that gives us opportunity to extend the AAA brand into some of these channels that we wouldn't have been considered for otherwise.
Okay, thanks for sharing those perspectives.
Yeah.
Pranav, Swiss Re is one of the largest reinsurers in the world. Now, what are your perspectives on the current distribution landscape, given your work with multiple insurance companies?
Yeah, no, thank you. So we see, obviously a lot of the different insurers, but also alternate ecosystem players come up in the market. And we see that from a global point of view. I think on the commercial side, we continue to see, the dominance of the broker channel. And I think, one of the first things I'd like to confirm is, I think from our point of view, that's here to stay. right? I think a lot of initiatives going on in the broker side to take some of the friction out, to improve the proposition, which we do. But I think that landscape shifts. Clearly, we've seen a lot of shift towards more digital-ish distribution within insurtechs. So on the small commercial side. Now, as much as percentage-wise that might be growing, that still remains a very small percentage. So clearly, a lot of room to grow on that side, right? Personal lines, I think you've spoken already, Chris. So I won't go there. But my strong view, looking at the market overall, is I think this alternate distribution, whether it comes from embedded or affinity or any other business models, I think represents a big shift. I think a big shift in that it gives us an opportunity not just to smooth out the delivery value chain to take friction out of the distribution landscape, but it also, what excites us a lot actually, is that it gives us an opportunity to actually create the product that actually suits the customer, right? It's giving us a lot of opportunity to drive product innovation and to create a better overall, maybe sometimes cheaper, sometimes more effective, proposition for the customer. So I think that's exciting us.
Thanks for sharing. We'll touch on customer experience briefly now. Chris, do you believe that consumers really expect an Amazon-like experience when they're buying personalized products like auto and home insurance today?
I think the customer expectation has definitely been higher. Whether we get to an Amazon-like experience or not, we'll see. But and we definitely know that consumer expectations are being shaped by how they interact with other industries. Kind of insurance has always been somewhat of a laggard. So if you're a digital native that's for the first time getting an insurance product like a renter's product, for example, or insurance is actually it's a product you don't interact with a lot, and you're kind of revisiting the market, if you will, going shopping or having an interaction with your carrier, you might be underwhelmed. And I feel like the industry knows this. We know that the consumer expectations is kind of top of mind in the experiences that we create. Pranav threw a really good word out there, friction. So we know that any sort of friction that you throw in the system, that's an opportunity and a trigger for customers to go shopping. And so when you look internally, kind of how we start to address these sorts of things, and starting to create these very streamlined experiences, ordering pre-fill, just making it very simple to take the customer's money. These have benefits. We see like rise in our close ratios, and people that are completing quotes. So that, getting to that Amazon-like experience, I think is definitely a good goal for carriers to have. I think we're all trying to get there. It's a bit of a complex problem, if you will. You want to offer the simplicity of being able to deliver the product while at the same time trying to provide the right level of advice and guidance. And, in order to be successful, you need to be catering to both. So yeah, 100%. I think we're going to continue to see kind of progress on the carrier side. I think this opens the door for a lot of other new entrants, if you will, that feel like, hey, we can do this better than an insurance carrier can. We can create a better experience for them as well. And so that's creating opportunity for some of these like startups to start entering into the insurance market.
Thanks for sharing. That's a perfect segue into what we're going to chat about next, startups. So Chris and Pranav, this question is for both of you. Can you share how your companies work with startups today to distribute insurance products?
Yeah, so I can start. I think we actually engage with startups in a variety of different ways, right? Overall, as Swiss Re. So if I zoom into what we do as Swiss Re Solutions, I think a large part of the raison d'etre, why we exist, is to drive innovation and progress in the industry, right? And that is something, I know it sounds very cliche, but we actually take it very seriously, right? I mean, as a company, and we believe that if the reinsurers don't step up, if we are not driving product innovation in the industry, we're actually hampering, right? Because so we take that onus of driving innovation. So in that vein, I think we are always looking out for insurtechs, digital MGAs, or whatever, to come to us. If they have a new product idea, quite often we'll roll up our sleeves and we'll work on product definition with them. Right? We'll provide our technology, our data, our actuarial or analytical expertise, our underwriting expertise, and we will actually help them, co-build product together. We will also help them, obviously goes without saying that we'll, eat our own dog food and provide our, underwriting capacity to back programs. But we'll also help then, have place that if they need fronting carriers, if they need other insurance partners, if they need to get to some other ecosystem partners to have that, placed. So we'll do that. And vice versa, we also work with a lot of non-insurance carriers, or sorry, non-insurance entities. Auto manufacturers, for example, OEMs. We have deep strategic relationships with many of the largest global auto manufacturers. Big technology companies, right? We've been doing a lot of work to help them create propositions, and then we'll bring the relevant insurtechs or MGAs or carriers in to actually, because we are the reinsurer, we're never the fronting carrier, or we never the end underwriter. So we'll bring those people in to do that. And then finally, just very quickly, for other people who are more the tech vendors, right, who are creating machine learning solutions, data solutions, other software solutions, quite often, we will use them to create our own propositions. But quite often we will orchestrate and put together some point solutions from different vendors and create larger solutions. So for example, we've just launched a flagship product called Rapid Damage Assessment, which is helping the industry deal with a massive problem of post-cat claims. Right there, we've taken a lot of different vendors and data suppliers to the industry. We put it together, and now we've just launched a proposition which takes a big, helps people get back on their feet. We saw a massive impact, by the way, after Ian. Just being able to process claims and pay out much sooner. So huge impact on the community, and also huge impact for the insurance company partners of ours. So we also work in that capacity, like a tech incubator and hyperscaler for vendors.
Thanks for sharing those. Chris?
Yeah, so most of the alternative distribution partners that we work with right now are startups. Everyone trying to thinking, they can kind of attack the market in a different way than the traditional industry has so far. So lots of experience in working with startups, and they are, kind of looking at different ways and different insertion points into the insurance market. So we've got some of these high volume comparison shopping partners like your Jerry.ai's or your Zebras of the world. Other startups that are trying to get into more of the embedded space, which is a very hot topic. I'm sure that we'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later, but can we introduce an insurance product at the same time as kind of whatever asset that you're getting insurance for? So we see a lot of activity happening sort of at the point of sale or embedded. So partnerships, startups that are trying to partner with kind of bigger like financial institutions or bigger existing kind of companies within these adjacent markets, like within the mortgage space or somewhere within like the auto purchasing experience. So a lot of activity kind of across the board, all trying to kind of go after the consumer in different ways. And a lot of that's all coming from the startup world at this point.
Thanks for sharing, Chris. So you did mention and highlighted embedded insurance. So let's turn to that topic. This question is for both Pranav and Chris. So it is in fact a very hot topic across the insurance industry and multiple InsurTech conferences throughout the years, right? Can you share your thoughts on, what is embedded insurance and why is it gaining so much traction in the market as a distribution channel?
I'll take first crack at this one. So I've seen a couple different definitions of embedded insurance, but kind of the one that we operate with is, it's the insurance transaction at the same time as the asset that you're getting insurance for. I think why this is such a hot topic is because it makes so much sense from an experience standpoint. I'm going to need both of these products. Why do one and then, turn around and go get the other? Or to get the mortgage on my house, I'm going to need, that proof that I have insurance. So I think a lot of this is just customer experience driven. I think other industries have, this has kind of been how they've operated for a while now. So now it's making its way to insurance. But I think there's a lot of people that are betting on this. I'm personally pretty bullish on this category. I think it just makes sense from an experience standpoint. But saying, insurance isn't a product that, you necessarily think about every single day, nor do you say, oh, they had such a great purchase experience, I'm going to go switch my insurance over to this company as a result. It's kind of like when you need it. So I think we'll eventually start to see some turnover. And I think a lot of these companies are positioned in with these embedded distribution channels are going to see continued success in the future.
Yeah,
Thanks,
look,
Shah.
I totally agree with Chris. I think to expand on that, I think we see embedded not just from a point of sale opportunity point of view, right? We see it across, how the way we look at it is how can this add differentiation? How can it bring benefit to either the insurance perspective or the customer perspective, all through the life cycle. So clearly the opportunity at the front to either distribute, sell, like you said, at the time of sale, or using the data or the customer information, or just the access, the customer access to actually position the product with less friction. Sorry, use that word again, right? To reduce the cost of delivery or the friction of delivery, but quite often to improve the quality of underwriting, right? In many of these cases, the quality of data, the breadth of data that you get to create a better product and to do better pricing, I think is invaluable, right? So that's definitely first perspective why it's attractive. The second perspective around, how do you manage the customer life cycle, right? How do you monitor usage? How do you make sure that, you can, for example, provide proactive safety, right? Insurance is not just about paying a claim. It's about making the customer safer. It's about how they use the product, and throughout the life cycle, reducing the call times, intervention points, call it whatever, right? To the carrier. And most importantly, it is about the claims experience, right? Is there a valid angle where we can settle claims quicker, faster, cheaper, right? Fairer. So, and we're seeing in many different use cases that we've built, I think many of those theses come true in any one given opportunity, right? So we like to think of it as a very holistic proposition.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts on embedded insurance. Let's turn it over now to talking about OEMs in the context of distribution. This question will be both for Chris and Pranav. OEMs like Tesla are selling auto insurance directly to their customers. Do you believe that more OEMs will distribute insurance directly to consumers as more connected cars are built?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. I think this is a very active topic. I can say, there is hardly a top 10, top 20 global automotive manufacturer that we have not had a discussion about OEM partnership, to be honest, right? And especially the newer breed of EV manufacturers that are coming on, everybody almost has an embedded insurance strategy in place. So I definitely think that it has a lot of legs. I think it has a lot of rationale on all of those angles that I just brought about. How do you sell? How do you get better underwriting? How do you create a better product? How do you settle claims? I think the auto space has a huge potential for doing embedded right. Then the question becomes, are they doing it right? Is it being successful? And I think that's where I think the jury's out. I think the pure sales approach that many of them have started with has not been very successful, particularly in the US, has not been very successful for a variety of reasons that go to, the landscape of automotive distribution in the US, customer behavior, etc. But I also think that people have not invested in creating the right, in leveraging the embedded model as well as they could have. I can expand on that later, but I don't think, in other words, that people executed a holistic embedded strategy in that space, which also I think then shows in the results.
I agree. I'll just add on that. I'm with Pranav. I think we're OEMs. This is definitely part of their long-term strategy. I mean, they've got two big advantages. They've got the customer base that already exists, with the experiences, so they have the touch points with the customers, and they have data. I mean, so telematics it's seen as a big part of the future of insurance, and who has it? Has the OEMs have it? So the question is, how much in the insurance game do they want to play? The Tesla route. GM, now has an insurance company. I think others are filling out, how vertically integrated do they want to be within this. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to set up your own insurance company. There's a lot of work that goes into it with licensing and shell companies and building out the platforms, that's a pretty big undertaking. So that might not be something that necessarily an OEM wants to bite completely off, especially right off the bat. So maybe in this model, carriers still do have a role and a place working with these OEMs as they build out their insurance programs.
Thanks for sharing your perspectives. Switching gears in industries one more time, let's talk about big tech. Big tech companies like Amazon and Google are entering the insurance market. What are your views on big tech gaining traction in insurance distribution? And this question is for both Pranav and Chris.
Yeah, I can go first on distribution specifically. I'm not sure. I mean, I think the jury is still out there. I think big tech companies are going to have a belief that they have a right to play in some capacity. So they have similar advantages, if you will, kind of as we talked about with the OEM. So they've got the customer base that exists. They have data, not necessarily like telematics data, but they have, customer data that's incredibly valuable. And those are kind of big assets if you want to play in that space. So, I think kind of like similar to the OEMs, I don't think like anyone's going to come in and say, well, go build out a full stack kind of insurance company because I think I can do this, better than the insurance industry. It's a complex, high regulatory sort of environment. I don't know if, with low margins. So I don't know if that's necessarily attractive, but I think there's opportunities to help insurance carriers to further diversify revenues as they get into the insurance space, like in Amazon. We've seen this in Europe. Makes sense. They have a marketplace that already attracts shoppers, so it's attractive. For Google, I know they kind of dabbled in this in the past, and I know they're hatching some plans right now, but maybe their role is, rather than trying to compete with the industry, maybe they're finding ways to help the industry by picking off different pieces of the value chain to assist carriers.
Yeah, no, I'll echo Chris's comments. I think I also agree that I think the tech companies definitely have a lot of capability to play in the distribution space. I think more than just the distribution space, I think they can provide a ton of data, as Chris said, to actually make it a better proposition all around, right, throughout the life cycle. The question, I think, always in my mind, reading from the outside, it's always been, are they actually interested? Is this on the top of their priority list, right? Is the pain and effort of going through all the regulatory cycle? And, insurance can be difficult, right? I mean, people can, some of these companies are very sensitive about adverse customer reaction. And sometimes in insurance, you have to say no to clients, right? You get into litigation, you get all sorts of things happening in insurance. And sometimes these guys have been very shy of getting into that. So I definitely think that there is a big room for them to play directly or indirectly in this space. I am watching this space very with a lot of interest. For example, they've just recently launched a new proposition, seems like, in the UK, with Amazon. So I'm sure all eyes will be on stuff like that. In the past, some of these guys have been in and out of insurance distribution. So that's that. The one other quick comment I wanted to make is in some of these cases, there are also another angle, where you can build insurance proposition for the users of the platform, whether it is with or along with or embedded into Amazon or Google or whatever. But so, for example, we've just taken a big step of building an entirely new product for cyber, for exclusively for AWS customers. We've had a lot of engagement and involvement of AWS in that, but that reflects a great opportunity, right? Where it is for the Amazon customer base, leveraging some of the unique telemetry and unique data that comes off the platform. Likewise, there are opportunities, for example, for e-commerce giants for shipping for marine, to create a new class of marine product, right? So if you think broadly about how those tech ecosystems can be used to create a new generation of product with or without their engagement or deep engagement, I think you'll find there's a world of possibilities there. You just have to think creatively, entrepreneurially.
That's very exciting. We'll be sure to watch out for this space in terms of what technology companies end up doing in insurance. Next up, we're going to switch gears one more time and think through direct-to-consumer models. Chris and Pranav, this question is for both of you. Many carriers and insurtechs chose to leverage direct-to-consumer distribution models and experienced high customer acquisition cost over the past years. What are your thoughts on direct-to-consumer going forward? And are there any really big emerging distribution channels that you think are delivering value to insurers?
I can start with that. Yeah, direct to consumer. I mean, that's tough. Like if you're building a product, an insurance product, trying to go direct to consumer, like we've seen. I mean, you're competing with billions of dollars being spent in advertising and marketing within the insurance industries. It's a pretty crowded space. I mean, single companies spend billions of dollars on it, so they can flash commercial in front of you every TV break, watch while you're watching TV at night. So, I mean, that part is not a surprise. I mean, I think from like this, from a carrier perspective, kind of like participating in some of these insurtechs, I mean, it's great for us. I mean, this helps us reach new parts of the market. So I think as like a carrier, I mean, we see benefit in participating in some of these things. But kind of going back to the acquisition cost, I think, this is where maybe some of these like affinity or like point of sale sort of models will flourish because the customers are already there, so you're not so much focused on like the acquisition and getting the advertising and all the spend that's going into that, but you're selling into a customer base that already exists. So I think if you're kind of like coming in fresh, I mean, going direct to consumer is going to be challenging, but it's going to lend itself well, I think, to some of these sort of affinity, sort of embedded plays in the future.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I'd echo Chris's comments. I think going D2C for home and auto is expensive. It doesn't matter whether you're new or established, and we've in the time has proven that. So I agree with Chris on 100%. I think to add, I think on the B2B side, on the commercial side, you've had some case studies. Right. It has been very challenging for even B2B, the commercial insurance insurtechs. But I think they're together with some smart marketing, some very strong vertical focus or customer segment focus. There are, I think, better success stories. But it still remains overall a very challenging space.
Thanks for sharing your perspectives. Before we get to audience questions, I have one final question. Chris and Pranav, what lessons have been learned related to some emerging distribution models that we've discussed today? What are some key nuggets and insights that you want to share?
Chris, okay, I'll go first on this one. Sure. Okay. So I think, look, I mean, we could write a book on lessons learned and what to do and what not to do. I think first of all, the biggest thing that I see in the embedded context is you got to make sure. I mean, some of these things are going to sound very basic, right? But this is the thing where I think a lot of things are going wrong. It's super critical to have alignment of interest. Okay, and be very clear on what each party expects out of this. And the reason I say, apologize for how basic it is, I just see it go wrong so many times, right? There is huge potential. We have these millions and millions of customers. Oh yes, and we want to, monetize insurance and sell them. Yeah, great. But if you don't want to make money off insurance, if you're saying, we've seen so many case examples, whether it is tech platforms or mobility or whatever, where you're trying to build insurance, what drives monetization for you is not what drives monetization for the insurance player, right? Quite often your monetization is actually giving cheap insurance to your customer base so that they're happy and you make money there. Well, guess what? You can't run insurance at 110 combined, or in some cases 150 combined. You just can't. Right? Or, well, yes, we want to make money means we'll charge 30% distribution commission. No, sorry, because now you're more expensive than the broker channel, right? And we see that all the time. So being in lockstep between the insurance party and the embedded party on, okay, how do you actually split the economic gains, right? What defines monetization for you and for us? What defines value for, and then how are you going to share that value? And where is that value going to come from? You have 3 mouths to feed still, You want to give something back to the customer because it's a better product. You want, the two parties to make money. So where is that money coming from and how much? I think we see that going wrong a lot. And I've seen people realize that lesson in year 3 after having lost a lot of money that the other party is just not willing to budge. The second big lesson learned for me personally is, you have to invest. I've seen where people go in with the lure of pure, hey, here is distribution, but fail to make the investments to actually do better database underwriting or make the process frictionless or whatever, right, to do proper integration. You end up finding most of those partnerships end up badly. So going in with proper investment, proper integration, proper product configuration, so that this is now actually a better product than the customer could have gotten otherwise, and it actually performs well in underwriting. As simple as it is, I think it's super important, right? And I think third thing for me is, whatever it is, you have to be in it for the long run. You have to have deep contractual relationships. You got to have proper brand building. You got to have a strategic alignment of long-term interests. So do all of that. Don't just, my advice to everybody is don't just go in because it's a shiny object and you're saying, oh, well, they have 1 million customers, surely I can win 5%. Do some more hard work behind that.
Chris? Great advice.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit earlier in our journey, so Pranav was taking notes there. I mean, so we're kind of like going through the experience and kind of learning with these partners. But I mean, I'll jump on one thing that you said, like kind of that alignment. So, as we were talking about before, a lot of these alternative channels, at least we've been working with, are startups at the end of the day. And that alignment, I think, is going to be critical for the long-term success. I could not agree more with that comment. So a lot of these companies are in their infancy. A lot of them, are, perhaps like tech-oriented folks coming into the insurance industry. I think kind of our experience thus far is, I mean, they're very good at kind of helping grow, kind of attracting shoppers with their value propositions. But that's not the whole thing, right? So we want to grow, but we want to grow profitably. So we need a partner to help us with that. And I think some of these channels are focused more on growth at this point in time than some of the rest of the economics that matter to carriers. For example, like retention. That's great. You can bring them in the door, but if they're leaving me in, in the first 3-4 months, then what good is that for me? And profitability. I mean, like help us find the right sort of risks that sort of meet our product. I think dialing all these pieces in is going to help a lot of these channels, if you will, have longevity in the insurance market.
Thanks, Chris and Pranav, for sharing your thoughts on lessons learned. That's very insightful. I want to now take some time to address several audience questions with you. First one relates to some startups. One member of the audience asks, what is the most important thing you look for in a company before you work with them? So Pranav and Chris, are there some things that you could potentially share with some of the startups or the founders on this session?
On the startups, I always look for, okay, so what is the real differentiation? There are many flavors of vanilla out there today, right? And there are every idea you have 5 different people coming at it, 6 different ways. So for me, it's always about, getting into a level of detail and actually understanding, okay, so what is their real differentiation? And how much of it is actually proven thesis or proven versus, still in thesis land, right? So for me, just like a VC, I'm sure Ravi would agree, it's about the quality of the team, right? It's about, have they done it before? If they're earlier, and how solid ground are they? So it takes a lot of work actually to really get behind and see how strong they are. But if the question, I wasn't sure, if this is just for startups, but if it is for embedded players or players who may be not as a tech vendor or whatever, but maybe more a distribution player, again, I really like to see, okay, so how does this make the customer better? or how does this make the insurance proposition and the customer experience better? And unless there is differentiation in it, and unless there is an actual deep willingness to engage, strategic alignment, then I think it's a question mark in my mind. So those are things that I test for.
I agree with those. I mean, yeah, top two, Pranav hit on them. Yeah, I look at the team, kind of what have they done before? Kind of what's their track record? And then also, I mean, the experience that they're building, like what is the value proposition? Do we think this is a differentiator kind of within the market? If you will, so I agree with Pranav.
Thanks for addressing that question. Let's turn to embedded again. One of the members of the audience asks, does embedded trend displace any traditional value chain players like agents, brokers, being direct to consumer digital? That's an example. Do the traditional players take on any new roles in this embedded reality?
Yeah, it can be either or, right? We've seen case examples of both. I think in a traditional or in a typical expected embedded sense, you would see, I guess, the broker or the agent go away. But the reality is, in many cases, you still need the agent for good reason, whether it is to do follow-ups or servicing, or insurance is complex, right? In many cases, people need to understand what exactly my coverage is, and the role of the agent is there, even in home and auto. Especially when you create a different mousetrap, if you create a different product which doesn't, which is different to what the customer has previously experienced, you need an agent. I think many cases. So it can, and many cases does replace the agent, but sometimes not. Sometimes, like in the product I was talking about in the B2B space, right? In the commercial space, sometimes you actually need the agent more because now you're needing to explain. It may not, like I was saying again, in this cyber example I was giving you, it can be distributed via the digital interface of, let's say, an AWS or the AWS marketplace, but not many insurance buyers are there. So you do need, so there you're using, in many of those cases, you're actually using the embedded partner more as a data tech platform enabler, whatever else, to do better underwriting or better customer servicing. But you still need an agent for sales. So you see all of those models. If you look deep enough, you see all of those models.
Thanks, Pranav. Chris?
I agree with that. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, as long as I've been in the insurance industry, I've always heard the agent model is going to get disrupted, and, I have yet to see it. So I think there's going to, continue to be a home as we go into more like the humanless experience. To Pranav's point, maybe the role of that agent changes. It's, they purchase digitally without a human, but there is the need of an agent at the end of the day. There is guidance that is required, or some support to the shopper or to the existing insured. So I think at least in terms of like the agent or that part of the value chain, I think that's going to continue to have a home.
Thanks for addressing that question. We have a question with regards to, again, embedded distribution. That's a hot topic. How does the revenue economics change with embedded? More specifically, will it remain transactional or any alternatives?
Chris, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, I think this point in time, kind of like given our experiences, like the economics are very similar. So, it's an embedded agency, if you will. I mean, we're still paying them commissions. So I think that exists. Whether we get to a point, I don't know if, some people operate with the definition of embedded as like basically your insurance comes with like the product. I don't know when we'll get to that point, but you buy your car, it comes with you. There's enough data out there in the world where we understand kind of the risks that you are, and you don't really have to do anything. Perhaps sometime at that point we'll get there. And then I think, if we move into that sort of model, that'll fundamentally change the economics, if you will, in terms of distribution.
Yeah, and I think you covered it. I think I don't really have much to add. I think it depends on the model, right? Like I was saying before in my last question, I think we've seen all models. Right, but typically, I mean, the agent commission, I think it's a fair expectation to have that the agent commission goes to the distribution partner. But sometimes we've seen people who want double, or who don't want any commission, but they want the pricing to be so cheap that, almost the money comes out of there. So we've seen all models, but that'd be a fair expectation.
Thanks for addressing that. So this also relates to kind of emerging tech in terms of this particular question and embedded again. One member asked, with emerging tech like blockchain, how do you foresee its capabilities augmenting embedded insurance? Does it differ along the user experience versus new products? Is there any effect on the regulatory aspects in the US market related specifically compared to big tech? Do you have any points of view on this particular question? Pranav or Chris?
I don't have a particular perspective on blockchain or not, right? I mean, from my point of view, there are very few cases in insurance where there is a use case that you can only solve with blockchain, but not with other tech, right? So whether something is built with blockchain or not, I think is the secondary question, the secondary consideration. I don't think it fundamentally changes. Unless I'm missing something, I haven't really seen too many use cases where it's either made a material difference or there is a new use case that has opened up, because of blockchain or whatever else.
I agree. I feel like when we started talking about blockchain back when that was in our labs function, whatever, 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, and kind of read about the different applications. I don't think it's really made a splash kind of at this point in time. So in terms of like anything blockchain specific, I don't think so. But I mean, something that we're following. It's obviously a hot piece of tech that has some very interesting foundational capabilities that I think we just haven't really figured out how to use within the industry.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. Ravi, the managing director of the Hive, did you want to weigh in here on some of the blockchain commentary?
I think I'll defer to Pranav and Chris.
Okay.
So the issue here is that there are, when it comes to sort of transparency and verification, there are some use cases around kind of insurance, reinsurance, and so forth. But I think we still need to make a lot of progress before we say, hey, blockchain is critical for this particular use case.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives.
I'd just very quickly, I'd concur with that. I think in the back office, in intra-company settlements, in submissions of claims and so on, we've definitely seen some credible use cases, where blockchain definitely makes it easier, it just reduces some of the friction. There's no question about that. But in all I was trying to say is in the embedded space, we haven't really seen that much change, right? I mean, we haven't seen the needle. It is not a needle moving event especially on the front end of the business.
Thank you so much for your insights and perspectives on all accounts here. One person has a question with regards to stages of startups that you work with. Do either of you work with insurtechs that have already done Series A raise?
We do. We work at all stages. Depends on what model it is. If you're talking about a insurance MGA, digital MGA, and embedded player, we typically do prefer to see a little bit of underwriting history, but it's not a must. But otherwise, if they're on the tech side, we work with all stage companies.
And Chris?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. I haven't kind of checked to all our how far in terms of how many rounds of funding that they've done, but I think most of them are kind of beyond Series A. So I think for sure we do.
Yeah, and I'll speak on behalf of Avanta Ventures. Yeah, we invest in companies from C to Series B and across mobility, insurtech, and risk adjacent sectors. So the answer to that question is yes. This particular question is an insurance-related question within the sector of healthcare, and if you want to touch on it, we can. Do you feel like the healthcare insurance models are evolving over the next few years or decades? It's been incredibly hard for insurtechs in the healthcare space, like Oscar out of New York, to really make some headway. But do you have some points of view there?
I have no idea, to be honest. Yeah, my even on my personal health insurance, I think I defer to the expert in our house, is my wife. I have no idea about health insurance, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. I don't want to give a very reckless answer.
All right, wonderful. I think we have a few minutes for some closing commentary. Chris and Pranav, are there things that you'd like to share with regards to just distribution as we've touched on today, and just have some closing remarks?
I can go first. I think in the years to come, I think the insurance distribution space, it'll be an interesting space to watch. A lot of activity. I think this idea of embedded insurance, it definitely has legs. It is the hot topic right now in the insurance industry, and I think it actually makes sense to a lot of carriers as well. So I think definitely be on the lookout there, especially as I think more companies like adjacent markets are realizing that, hey, we have a right to play here, or it wouldn't be too difficult to do things like diversify our revenue by introducing insurance within our experience. But I think we're just going to see more and more activity in the distribution space. So definitely keep tabs.
Thank you.
No, nothing in particular to add on my end, except big thanks to the Hive, Avanta Ventures, Moha for having me here, and for the audience. I always like to put in that feel free to reach out to Swiss Re. We are here. We love to drive innovation in the sector. Doesn't matter whether you're on the insurance distribution side or whether you're on the tech side. And I'll personally volunteer if anybody wants to reach out to explore, partnering with Swiss Re. Please feel free to reach out and write to me.
Yeah, likewise for CSAA as well.
Thank you so much, Chris and Pranav, for your time and your sharing your expert insights with the audience today on trends in insurance distribution. It's been a real pleasure
Welcome.
To participate in the session with you. Ravi, thanks so much for hosting us. I'll turn it over to you for any parting words you'd like to make.
Thank you, Moha, for moderating this event, and thank you, Pranav and Chris, for also participating. We look forward to seeing the audience in next week, actually, for an event on the emerging security landscape. Olivia, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you, Moha, Chris, and Pranav for the panel discussion. It was super insightful, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. And then, like Ravi said, we do also have an upcoming webinar next week around security. So make sure to register for that. And then I will send out the recording link to everyone shortly after this event. But thank you to our panelists, Moha, for moderating. It's been a really great event.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you, Ravi.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.